Hello, everybody. Today, I'm just gonna record and talk about whatever comes to my mind. I don't really have a plan, and I don't really know how long this video is going to be. If you hear some random noises outside, it's because there's like stuff going on out there. I think there are people knocking and dogs barking, but don't worry about that. Okay, well, right now it's 11:52 in the morning. It's May 6th, day after Cinco de Mayo, or May 5th. And well, it's pretty interesting because I just had breakfast at McDonald's and I had a large cup of coffee. So I guess you could say I'm feeling good. So McDonald's for me was like one of my first jobs that I had back when I was like 13, I think, 13, 14 years old. Um, like one of my best friends got a job there, and like he led the way, and then like I also applied at McDonald's like back in those days, and I think now you still have to fill out an application. Like you go to McDonald's and you ask for an application. Well, that's what we did back then. You would fill out the application there, like they would give you a pen, and you would fill out the application at the like you know sitting down at a table, and they would hire you, right? Like you were allowed to work. I think when you were like 13, 14, I think from 14 to 16, there was a certain rule. Like I think it was like 4 hours or 2 hours, something like that. You would work after school, obviously, because you were in school. And yeah, like I started working there, and but I wasn't gonna talk about like my experience there, which I could. I may get into it or not. But I remember, I mean, I was sitting there drinking my coffee today, and there's still young people working there, right? Like right now in the morning. So I don't know if they're going to school in the afternoon or at night or what, or if they just dropped out. But yeah, there were like kids there, not kids, like, teenagers working there. And, coffee, like I got to thinking about the coffee, and I was like, well, I was sitting there, right? And now I guess in 2024 they come up to you and they bring you your order. If you want like more ketchup or something or napkins, you can ask like the dude that's there, and he'll bring them to you. And like I was almost done with my I was like halfway through my cup of coffee, and the dude comes up to me and he's like, "Do you want more coffee, sir?" you know. And I was like, no thanks, like I'm not gonna drink more than this. I'm not even gonna finish this, right? I didn't even finish it. I left like probably like less than a quarter I left of coffee there. And I was like, no thank you. But then it got me thinking about my days when I was working at McDonald's, and I was like, oh yeah, I think they have free coffee until like whenever you want. Like you could just be sitting there drinking coffee. That's great. And I remember when I would work there, like in the States, you would have these old people, like these old men and women, probably in their 60s, 70s, 80s, that would come to McDonald's early in the morning. I think like 6, 7 in the morning, and that's all they would get, like their cup of coffee and their newspaper. And they'd be reading their newspaper. Sometimes they would talk, chat with each other. um, and I remember that I was like, oh yeah, I think that's a thing in McDonald's. There's free coffee. I'm not sure, don't take my word for it, but I think there is in the morning, or I don't know if it's like all day. Let me know in the comments. But I remember that when I would work there, there were moments when they would tell us like go offer coffee to the customers, and we would walk out there with our either caffeinated coffee or our decaffeinated coffee, right? I think the coffee that's caffeinated, the regular one was like brown or black color, right? And then the one that was decaf was like orange. And we would walk out there and like refill the people's cups, right? Like if they wanted more coffee, they got it, and it was free, and I think it's still free. um, so it got me thinking. I was like, how come I never took advantage of that? How come I never bought like a cup of coffee and just drank coffee all day? Like I mentioned already, I was like 14, 15, 16. working there. And throughout those years, I never once was like, oh, free coffee, free energy. Because for me, I know there are many people that say, oh, coffee doesn't give me energy. Coffee is just, like I like it. Like there are people that will drink beer for the taste, not to like get drunk, or to feel a buzz. Excuse me. And there are people that do the same for coffee. There are people that say, I'm going to drink coffee, but not because um, but not to get energy, just because I like the taste and it doesn't even give me energy, right? There are people that say they drink coffee at night so they could sleep better, but I don't know to me that doesn't make sense, because coffee has caffeine, and especially with sugar, that's going to keep you up. But whatever, there are people that say it does the opposite to them. Maybe they have a different type of metabolism or something, I don't know. But anyway, I was like, yeah, how come I never did that? And then it got me thinking too, well, you never really needed to, right? Because you were young. You were like 14, 15, 16. You had energy, right? So it's like when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, you have energy, or I don't know if it's the fact that I don't know what it is. Like maybe everything is just new to you, and that motivates you. That in itself motivates you. Maybe that's why adults nowadays say they want to travel to new places so they could experience that everything is new sensation, and that I think ultimately motivates you naturally, right? Like you don't even have to like motivate yourself or think about objectives or anything. Like it's just something that is natural, because you're in a new place, you're under new circumstances, so you're naturally motivated, you're curious to learn, everything there is to know about wherever you are or whatever you're doing. And this happens, I think, when you're a kid and when you're a teenager. Now I know there are teenagers that you know are depressed or whatever, so it obviously doesn't apply to them. But it's like, why is coffee such a huge thing with adults, right? Like I think you start to get into coffee. I started to get into coffee when I was like 19, 20, right? My cousin introduced me to coffee. And then from there on, like I have basically been drinking coffee ever since then, right? Which is like more than a decade. And and it's almost like if I don't have coffee, I can't really function throughout the day. Like I need it. And if you ask me why do you need it, I answer because I need energy. I need that energy to be productive, to be motivated, to do things, right? So it's kind of interesting how when you're a kid, you don't really need anything because you're naturally energetic. But then as you get older, I mean, just take for example old people that I mentioned. It's not uncommon to see old people like at McDonald's, like early in the morning, just drinking coffee all day, chatting, right? And why do they drink coffee? Could be because of the taste, but I think it's more so they could be alert, be awake. Why? Because naturally they're not anymore, right? They're experienced, they're seasoned, they already know everything about life, or everything there is to know about, their life or their circumstances. So they're probably bored all the time. They don't have energy, right? So maybe moving to a new place could provoke that natural curiosity, that natural like, I want to. I feel motivated. I feel energetic. Who knows? But yeah, that's kind of interesting how you no longer. So it's like, how can you get back that inner child, right? That inner child feeling of energy when you were like a kid and a teenager. If you were a teenager, obviously that had energy. How can you go back to that being an adult? In your 20s, you're still pretty hyped up. You're still, up and running, doing things, studying, working, whatever. But we can clearly see that as you hit like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, people tend to get slower, right? They tend to get more stable, obviously, or stabler. I think it's more stable. And and their energy level also drops, right? That's where people say it's kind of hard for me to learn new things. I'm kind of stuck in my habits. You already have. That's why it's kind of hard to start new things, I think, as you get older. Imagine telling like a 60-year-old person like, or maybe even like a 50-year-old person, like who's always been working, or who's always had a certain career path, telling them like, okay, now you're gonna end up somewhere else, right? There's a movie with Ben Affleck. I think it's called Long Short Ball or something like that. It's about the 2008 um, mortgage house crisis in the United States, and it's pretty interesting because in it you see uh, three or four different people, situations. Ben Affleck obviously is the young person who is not who he is affected by the market crash or whatever happened in 2008, the house crisis. He is affected by it, but there's a character in that movie in particular. He's older. I don't remember his name, and I don't remember the actor. But if you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a guy who's older. He's probably like 50. He's probably in his 60s even, and he loses his job because of the crisis, and he just kills himself, right? Because he can't, like, I think he knows that he's not going to be able to adapt and change. And then there's another guy who's just as old as he is. He's probably like 50, 60 also, and he tries to learn something new, to get a different type of job, to start over again, but it's so hard for him, right? Ben Affleck obviously is in denial at first, but eventually he gets the hang of it. He starts working in a, because I think they all worked at some firm, some fancy firm, making like money, or just handling money. And Ben Affleck eventually starts working as a construction worker, right? At first, obviously, he doesn't like it, but eventually he adjusts to it, right? And life goes on. So I think that's kind of interesting how there's that age difference, and I think particularly for energy, right? Like I could picture myself maybe, like for example, lately I've been kind of putting off exercising because I feel like I don't have the energy. But I also feel like, excuse me, I could have the energy, like if I drink more coffee, right? Or if I take vitamins or something like that. But that could provoke me to have like anxiety. So it's like you got to strike this balance between, you know, because your body needs exercise, your body needs to move, right? Like sometimes I feel like if I leave my arm still for a while, like in a certain position, it starts to get numb, and like I need to move it, right? I need to move it around. I need to move around too, especially like earlier today, right after drinking coffee. I got that sensation where I was like my hand was in a certain position, and then I started to get like a tingly feeling in it, like it started to go numb, and I had to move it, right? And I don't really know why that happens, but I think I imagine it has to do with moving. You have to move, right? So that connects with having to do exercise, with having to move around as well. um, so yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to say about that. um, right now I have been getting into hermetics, and there are these seven principles which I've been looking into, and I think it's really like mind bending stuff. What I like most about what I'm looking at right now is that I've watched a couple videos on it, I've read a couple things on it, and they all say the exact same thing. Like this is, I guess you could even say like official. These ideas, the Hermetism, they come from Hermes, which I guess he was a Greek god descendant from Gaia and Saturn in Greek mythology. And I'm also reading this book that expresses how, like, a lot of Christianity and a lot of religions are actually based on philosophy, which I found to be an interesting, like, fact or idea. But Hermes is supposed to be like Jesus Christ is supposed to be a reincarnation of Hermes Trigamestus or something like that is his name, and I guess he's the master of masters, like the teacher of teachers. And there's a book called the Cavillon or the Cavalion or something like that, And in it, it talks about these 7 principles. I think if you look up any video on YouTube or any article about Hermetism, they first start off with the principles, the 7 principles, like the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, the principle of mentalism. Like the first principle is mentalism, and it tells you that everything is mental, everything, even God. And it does have this notion, which I've spoken about in earlier videos, of the unity with the one, and how we're all together with the one. This is also kind of tied in with magic. And I saw this video where it was talking about how you could either go towards, I think it's the all with the self, or the self with the all. And you can either go at it from an orderly perspective or a chaotic perspective. I guess the orderly perspective, if you go from, I believe, the all is you are the all. I don't remember which one it is, but there's one that's like positive and one that's like negative. One that has to do with ego, and one that has to do with no ego, right? Like you like, I guess the transformation occurs when you strip off your ego and you connect with that oneness. But obviously that makes a quadrant, right? Especially with the order and the chaos. The chaos part is where like you have Satanism, right? It even has like the star, like the pentagram backwards with the pointy end at the bottom, and the other one has the star with the pointy tip at the top. And that's where you have like, I think there's even some stuff like related, that's like astrology. There's some stuff related with psychology, right? Like with positive thinking. But that's like, I think the ultimate idea there is that you have a superior being that's helping you out. And in the other one, you are trying to become that superior being. You are trying to become like God, and there's no order there, right? So the principles, going back a little bit to the principles, um, there's this one that says, I think, like like if you read the principles, or if you watch a video on the principles, they all kind of sound alike. They all kind of sound similar, right? Because like a lot of them have to do with duality. I think the first one not really, but the cause and effect one, the polarity one, the rhythm one, right? Like the rhythm one, it talks about how like whatever swings this way will eventually swing the other way with the same force. And so, whatever goes up comes down, and whatever goes down goes back up. Um, and that's something that my mom used to say, right? Like life, I don't know if like to an emotional extent, but life is sometimes like a roller coaster where you're up top, and then sometimes where you're down. Um, Two ideas here. I'm gonna go with the first one, which is just pretty simple, and I found it to be like really amazing. You that's like karma, right? Going back and forth, polarity, duality. Um, and this idea shocked me. I first heard about it in a video, and then I read it, and this is where I'm saying that there's like a uniformity. There's a certain order to this madness, right? To all of this, and the order here would be like, it's not so much for you to know this and just contemplate it. I mean, you do have to contemplate it and reflect on it and take it in, but the purpose is for you to understand it. And as soon as you can understand it, you can neutralize yourself from it. You can take yourself out of there and then put yourself in specific areas, right? Like, let's say life is sometimes high and sometimes low. You neutralize yourself, so you stop, you know, being in that karmic circle of like up, down, up, down, up, down. You neutralize yourself, so you're unaffected by it, by knowing about that principle. And then you situate yourself wherever you want. Like if you want, you could situate yourself up top, right? That's like the first idea. And the other one is it has to do with the polarity, like the duality principle. How, there's this idea where it says like, okay, hot and cold. It's in the Cabulon in the book, and it says it argues and it says hot and cold are basically the same thing. Excuse me, because it asks you, like, when you're cold and you go from cold to hot, where does hot start, right? Or when you go from hot to cold, where does cold start, right? Since you can't really know, it's like this idea of, I just heard it, it's like a proverb. It says, if you watch a pot like heating up, you'll never watch it boil, right? Because you have to kind of like step away, just leave it there on the stove, and then when you come back, like after some time, it'll be boiling, right? But if you're sitting there watching it start to boil, I guess it's kind of different. Well, anyway, this idea, uh, it makes me think about a lot of things because you have to start seeing where you can apply it, right? For example, sickness and health, rich and poor. So the idea of this polarity, I think it's in the polarity, or it's in one of the principles. It says that the extremes touch, the extremes meet, right? It's kind of like right and left. Like, think about protesters. Protesters, that are out there, like fighting each other. There's this side and there's that side that are arguing in the middle of the street. This principle basically says they're the same, and they're the same but in different degrees. It's like, and what it's trying to make you see is that it's the same, like, area, right? Like light and darkness are the same. It's the same situation but in different degrees, right? And I can see similar characteristics, or actually like identical characteristics. Like, these two protesters that are fighting each other are both people that are out there, that are making their voice be heard, that are ready to engage in conflict. They have those similarities, even if their ideologies just differ, right? So sickness and health, basically, the extremes touch, right? And there's the horseshoe theory, which, if you really think about it, left wing in politics and right wing extremes are the same, right? The extremes basically, and that's where you get like the full circle, right? And then you have like four different divisions, because the extremes are extreme, and typically they land in authoritarianism, right? And this idea of, like, the extremes, it's like basically saying, you're cold but you're really hot, or you're hot but you're really cold. And I'm trying to understand how this idea can be applied, because this is the beginning of alchemy, psychological alchemy, or just alchemy, which is the modification, like the literal transformation of life, of reality, of magic, right? And if you see my Operation Magician playlist, it kind of has to do with that, but that's a little bit more oriented towards like practical things. This is more like abstract, theoretical. So anyway, you do this, and it's like, okay, you have an illness, but that really means that you're healthy, right? Now I ask, or you're poor, or you don't have money, but that really means you have money, right? And it's like, you need to understand these principles. They're hard to understand, and the book, I love it because the beginning, I've never read a book that starts off by telling you that, basically, like, you're ready for this and you're gonna understand it or fuck off, right? That's basically how the book starts. Like, you're gonna start seeing things and learning things that can basically get you crucified, right? That if you talk to other people about these things, they're not only not gonna understand you, they're going to get mad at you and call you like insane, right? They're gonna demand for you to, like, shut up, or die, basically, because they are truths, that go against what people generally think nowadays, right? Like, one big idea out there that people are like, oh yes, like, our new god is obviously technology and science, right? If you try to, and data and facts, which I've spoken about already, like, if you tell someone, like, science is not real, it's only the best we have up to now, they're gonna make you out to be crazy. They're gonna say, what are you talking about? It's real, it's facts, it's data, it's, it's excellence, it's the best. And it's like they can't even fathom or consider the possibility that in the future, there are still going to be new options out there. Now, I was thinking about this because I'm a strong advocate for saying we don't know everything. There's, and when I say that we don't know everything, you have two options to go from there. Excuse me. You can either say we don't know anything, or we don't know everything yet, and there's so much more out there to learn, which was normally my take. But now I thought about this second option, which goes, we don't know everything yet, but we have covered pretty much everything there is to know in life, and we just have a little bit more to go, right? Like what's hidden or unknown is not all that much, right? Like over here, we would be talking about, maybe we know like point, I don't know, 8% of 100, right? So we're missing like 98.2, no, 99.2% of the information, right? And over here, I would be saying, we know like basically 95% of everything there is to know. We're just missing like 5%. And this is because when you try to think of ideas, new ideas, to for example, how can you make money, right? People will automatically tell you like invest, right? Like buy things cheaply and resell them. Um, yeah, like there's a limited amount of options, and those options, there's high competition in them, right? And you need to really commit to it. And it's like, I'm looking for a way to make money that hasn't been thought of yet, so I could take advantage of it, right? So I could be the first person to do it and make money easily, right? Because I would get a head start on everybody, right? But it's hard to innovate. It's hard to think of something that hasn't been thought of before, right? Like reading about the ancient teachings, from Manly, I think. It's this book I'm reading, and you start to see how a lot of ideas that, like eclectic, be eclectic, right? Like recently, I've been hearing people say like, yeah, you need to take an eclectic approach to everything. Like that's the new thing. And eclectic means for you to combine different elements from different disciplines, right? Like let's say you're in business and you want to succeed in business, and maybe you need to combine elements from psychology, from economics, from sociology, from politics, from maybe even biology. If your business has some biology inclination, and that's eclectic, right? Like you need to be versatile, flexible, and adapt and learn from different areas and apply things from fields that seem irrelevant to what you're doing, right? And that's like the new trend, right? It's been going around for probably 10 years now, where people say eclectic, right? You need to be flexible, adaptable. You need to adapt to different ideas. You need to cut thread from here and cut thread from over there. And this is an old idea, right? Like which I learned about from this book. Like eclectic, there were the eclectics like back in Greece, in Greece, back in with Socrates, with all them guys. Like these ideas, it's like you repeat a lot of the same things that have already been repeated, right? So it's like, how can you genuinely be innovative, right? One way is to combine ideas, right? Which is being eclectic. But that's kind of what Hermetism does, right? Like Hermetism is like, if something is hermetic, it's like tight. And these principles, I think they're secret, first of all, secret teachings, because most people won't accept them. They don't want to hear them. Or if you tell them to people, they're not going to understand them, because you need to be ready It's like this book starts off kind of mystical like that, but very practical to a certain extent as well, saying if you're reading this, it's because you have found this book and this book has found you, right? It's like your moment, it's your time, right? To you weren't, maybe if you would have been exposed to this before, maybe you were even exposed to this type of knowledge before, you wouldn't have understood it. And I always knew, like, in my mid 20s, that I was heading down this path of esoteric teachings, ancient teachings, secrets. Um, but I didn't know, but I wasn't like impatient. I wasn't like, I want to learn that about that. No, like now, I wasn't saying that back then. I was like, I know I'll eventually get there, but right now I'm still, with psychology, with behaviorism, with whatever I was learning at the time. But now it's like I have officially started that journey. And yeah, it makes me happy because now I'm going to be learning about that stuff. I don't know if I'll be making videos on it because I don't know how much of this stuff is really going to impact me, how much of it I'm really going to be believing. I want to, I mean, it's ancient. These teachings are ancient, and a lot of these ideas I've heard people say them. I've and this book says it, like the Cabulon, because I think the Cabulon is from like last century, and or it's relatively modern, but it says that a lot of disciplines, a lot of sciences take ideas from Hermetism, right? They're ingrained, mm, but you just don't. Um, but you just don't know they come from Hermetism, right? Which is like ancient Egyptian teachings, um, which we know it's like, how were the pyramids built? How, if you start to, if you're interested in this and you start to look up stuff, you're gonna get answers, and that's, I think, the pretty cool thing. And if you're ready for it, a lot of things are just gonna click up and make sense, and you're gonna say, okay, like, if you're not ready, I think it could be very confusing to understand something like, extremes touch, opposite extremes touch, you know because, for example, like I learned about the horseshoe theory back a couple months ago, so now it's like I can connect things, like connecting the dots, and say, okay, I understand that. I understand how that can be, right? You're a little bit more flexible, a little bit more open to take in these type of complicated, loaded ideas. Like, I think they are kind of loaded, um, but they make you think, and they open up the path for you to, and that makes a lot of sense, neutralize yourself, break free from that, and position yourself consciously now wherever you want, within the swing of back and forth, within the ups and downs, within the polarities, within the causes and the effects, right? I mean, I just started reading about the seven principles. I'm not even finished reading. I already watched videos on it. I know what they're about more or less, but you need to really take your time, dig in, like into these topics, um, because just seeing them once is not enough for you to fill, your knowledge bag, your knowledge header, your knowledge bag with all the possibilities it has, right? Like, it has a lot of potential. These ideas have a lot of potential, for you to really grow your ideas, expand them, and maybe even possibly do alchemy or magic, right? Which I think it's more of the sense of psychological magic, right? Um, like taking that first principle, like it's all mentalism. I mean, I think those notions do give you a certain power, mental power, and you are able to kind of like say, okay, if I think about this hard enough, long enough, consciously enough, it's like they say the beginner magician, or there are people, I guess they say we do these things all the time, but we're not aware of it. We call them destiny, right? I think there's a part in the Cavalon that says this. We do these things naturally, and we're not aware of it, and then we just call it like destiny, like, oh, that was just a coincidence, right? I got lucky or whatever. That was luck. But then there's the intermediate magician who's able to who like does something consciously to be able to have those results which they want, right? To transform, to do magic, and they just happen in different ways, right? And when they happen, maybe other people will say, "Oh, that was luck," or "That was circumstantial," or "That was a coincidence." But they know that it wasn't. They know that it was thanks to their contribution, their conscious contribution, right? And then there's the advanced magicians, which basically know like exactly when the results are gonna come out and how they're gonna happen, right? Which that's advanced, right? Which I think you can get there. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, what type of people do that? And I was like, probably like powerful people, like CEOs, politicians, rich folks. Like I think those are the type of people that probably do this or that have a good handle on magic. And obviously, they're not going to want to share it. Um, but the information is out there. All you have to do is study it, and that's something that also a lot of people aren't going to do. But if you take the time to do it, you probably could make progress. So, yeah, let me know what you think about all this. Let me know if you want me to make videos talking about what I'm learning from Hermetism. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, have a good day. Peace.